Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos, and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing how your ex's value reduces. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing how your ex's value reduces. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you likely see them as higher value than yourself right now. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 ways in which your ex's value reduces over time. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is false inflation. So when we're considering today's podcast and the fact that you as a dumpee are probably viewing your ex-dumper as more valuable than yourself right now, one of the things we need to focus on is the fact that their value probably wasn't that high in the first place. Now please understand what I'm saying here. I'm not suggesting that anybody, you, them, me, anyone at all, I'm not suggesting that anybody isn't a valuable person within humanity, okay? What we're talking about here is in regarding the relationship dynamic. When somebody enters a relationship, they generally are seen as a higher value person. Now again, this isn't about whether you are a better person than someone else. This isn't about whether you are not valuable as a person. This is about, within the relationship dynamic, who holds more value within it. And the dumper is seen as a higher value individual in this regard because something that they wanted, i.e. the relationship to end, took place. Whereas you as a dumpee, unfortunately, didn't get what you wanted. You wanted the relationship to continue. And therefore, if you wanted something and it was ignored, it wasn't allowed, it didn't take place, it is seen as though for what you want doesn't hold as much value as what your ex-dumper wants, because what they wanted, they got. And what you wanted, sadly, didn't take place. So that is why dumpers are seen as higher value individuals within the relationship dynamic, but it doesn't mean that they were a higher value person in the first place within the relationship concept. Now what I mean by this is that other than yourself, other people in the dating pool might not have put your ex-dumper on that pedestal that you did. They became a higher value individual because they made a decision, the decision to end the relationship. It wasn't because they was necessarily a great person. It wasn't because they was necessarily a great dating option. It wasn't because they was necessarily a great person, really physically attractive, somebody who was ambitious, somebody who achieved their goals. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were funny. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? It doesn't mean they were a good relationship option for anybody else other than you and what you saw. In essence, they are now a small fish in a big pond. They've gone swimming out to sea in the whole world of single people. They no longer have you as their cheerleader. So what we see here is false inflation. They wasn't necessarily this great person who was an amazing catch for anybody to be in a relationship with. No, we see someone who came to the decision that unfortunately your relationship wasn't working for them at that time. They lost romantic emotional attraction for you. That is an unfortunate fact. They actioned the breakup, they took the decision, and therefore they inflated their own value. You're propping up that value, you could say. So this is false inflation. So when we're talking about how your ex's value reduces, we have to acknowledge that now they're no longer in that connection with you. They are out in the big wide world of dating. They are competing against every other single person for new romantic partnerships. This means that they are no longer going to be in that safe zone of having someone who is always going to support them theoretically, i.e. you. No, they are now competing with these other potential dateable options. And this is why I said it's like now they're a small fish in a big pond. The pond is huge. Yes, they selected to go in it. Yes, That means they took action, but it doesn't mean they're going to be chosen by anybody. It doesn't mean that anybody else will see them as the dateable option that they want in their life. So when we consider about how your ex's value reduces, it's because of the likely knockbacks that they're going to receive now they are a single person. Life isn't easy as a singleton. Very few people are single and then instantaneously find a long-lasting forever relationship. Very, very few. It's almost impossible. This is why I say, if you, them, or anybody becomes single, the likelihood of you finding a new long-term compatible partner within a year or so is very, very slim. So they're going to find it tough. They're going to find it hard. People that they might want to get to know probably won't want to get to know them. Your ex-dumper might leave a relationship with you feeling high and mighty because you are giving that inflation to their ego, but now they're on their own. Now they're going to have to live their life for them, and they're going to have to see what other people think of them. It's not just about what you thought, it's about what other people think. And what other people think is not necessarily going to be the same as you see it. In fact, they are likely to have rejections. They're likely to feel that they're not as good as before they were. And this is why we can see your ex-dumper's value reduce and decline as time ticks by and they realise the reality of what the dating world really is. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you have the new hype feature, please hype this video as well. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is you can stop it. So today we're speaking about how your ex's value reduces. We're talking about your ex-dumper here, and you might be surprised to find out that you as a dumpee have a lot more power than perhaps you thought, because you can stop it. You can stop your ex-dumper feeling valuable. Now remember, we're not talking about as an individual. We're all valuable as human beings. We're talking about within the relationship dynamic and how you as a dumpee, in point number 2, have a huge say in this. Because remember what I was saying earlier, you in a sense was propping your ex-dumper up. You were propping up their ego. You were inflating their ego by your likely behaviour post-breakup, which most dumpees will be begging and pleading to some degree, reasoning maybe. All of this is inflating your ex-dumper's ego. You can stop it. You can stop inflating their ego. Once you stop inflating their ego, it stabilizes and then it starts to reduce. And this is what we're looking at, how your ex's value reduces. Well, if they're no longer having you as their cheerleader, you're no longer their biggest fan. In fact, they no longer have a biggest fan because you were the only one. You remove that safety net. You stop providing them with the support that, although they didn't necessarily ask for, they kind of expected. And there is the paradox. Your ex-dumper is unlikely to want you to chase, to beg, to plead. But they do expect you to beg, to chase, to plead. And if you don't do it, you remove that safety net. You remove that feeling that they are a valuable option. But if you are not saying they're valuable, then who is? Nobody else is. I've already said in point number 1, they're going to find it harder in the big, wide world of dating. If you remove that support, if you remove that feeling that they think, oh yes, I've always got my dumpee wanting me, if you remove that, you will reduce their value. And if their value reduces, they're going to start feeling a little bit more unsure of themselves. If they feel unsure of themselves, they might be more inclined to think of you as the better possible option. In fact, they might start seeing you as the valuable one within your dynamic. Because if you live your life to the full, if you focus on you and not them, what are you saying to them? Well, subconsciously you're saying, I don't need you because I'm absolutely fine without you. And therefore, they're going to be thinking, well, if my dumpee isn't chasing me, then who are they chasing? Or are they being chased by someone else? Does somebody else want them? Are they the valuable one? Are they the person that others want? This is how the dynamic can switch, shift, and you can be the one who is eventually chased by your ex-dumper. And if you want your ex back, that is, of course, what you crave. And therefore, dumpees, it's really, really important that you take action in this regard. Lots of dumpees see action as chasing their ex. I need to get my ex back. I would do anything I can to get my ex back. I'm going to write a letter, which is 20 pages long, explaining why they were wrong and I am right and we should be together. No, don't do that. Don't do grand gestures. Don't beg, plead, reason. Don't text, call, knock on their door. Don't do these things. The action you need to be taking is stopping chasing them, removing your interest, focusing on you, growing as a person, living your life to the full. Take your energy off them, put it on you, and you will become valuable, and their value will start to decline, to reduce. And when it gets to a point where the scales of value are somewhat more even, where you are raising your value and they are lowering their value, when those scales of value are somewhat even, this is when there is a bigger chance of their thoughts and feelings growing towards you. The level of romantic emotional attraction slowly but surely growing in their mind. And when it hits the necessary high point, boom, that is when they're going to reach out to you. And this is where you stand a chance of getting your ex back. Now, I can't guarantee you will, but what I can say is that if you grow your value, even if you don't get them back, you will find someone even better, because others will find you interesting. They will find you fascinating. They will find you desirable. And does it really matter if you get your ex back, if you can find someone even better? Surely the only thing that really, truly, genuinely matters is happiness. And that's why it's win-win. Get your ex back or find someone even better. And the best part is, dumpees, you can stop it because you are more in control than you think. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is lack of desire. So when we're talking about today how your ex's value declines, one of the elements which you might not be aware of is that your ex-dumper, your ex, is not going to feel the desire that you likely do to improve, to grow, and to change. The reason for this is that you work harder as an individual, as a human being, when you're feeling pain. This is something across the board. We do more as human beings when we are feeling pain. When we feel pain, we're more likely to make change. Whereas if we feel our life is just ticking along nicely, we're less likely to take that action. So what does this mean? How does this translate? Well, you've been dumped, you're heartbroken, you are likely to be putting in the work. That's why you're listening to today's podcast. When you were feeling okay with your life, were you listening to podcasts about how to become even better? No, very few of you would have been. Some of you may be, but most of you wouldn't. If you're honest with yourself, you're listening to today's podcast because you're feeling pain. Now, do dumpers put in that type of desire, effort? Do they have that drive to improve when their life seems to be somewhat okay? Remember, they made the decision to end the relationship. They didn't think it was for them. They felt they could find a better path. They're doing okay. They're feeling good. Are they really going to be reaching for the stars from this position? Well, I would suggest most of them will not. Most dumpers will suffer from a lack of desire. And what happens when you have a lack of desire? You guessed it, you become complacent. If you become complacent in life, you will start to reduce your growth to the point of where things level out, and then you start to go downwards, a downward spiral, a decline, a reduction of value. Being complacent is not attractive. So many people get dumped for being complacent. And your ex-dumper may have made the decision to end a relationship, but they might turn into someone who no one else wants to date because it's clear and visible that they are a complacent individual with a lack of desire to push forward, no spark for growth, not wanting to become a version 2.0 of themselves. They feel satisfied in who they are, and if they stall in that regard, whereas you as a dumpee are working harder and harder, living your life the right way, then by the time your ex-dumper recognises that nobody else is really interested in them, they will look back, reflect on your breakup and the relationship, realise that they shouldn't have dumped you, and then notice that actually you are doing a lot better than them. They will start to see you as a valuable individual and themselves reducing, just as we spoke about a little earlier. So how does this play out? Well, it plays out that lots of dumpers eventually reach out to their dumpees if a dumpee has been living their life the right way. And guess what? The dumpee says thanks, but no thanks. They say no. And you might think, well, I would never say that to my ex. I would never turn them down. I just want them back. Okay, well, let's wind this on 6 months. Let's see how you feel then. Of course, some of you will always have the thought that you would give them a chance, but you would be surprised how many people get to the stage where they can't even believe it themselves, but their ex has actually reached out to them. They've said, no, thank you. Because a dumpee can then see the lack of growth and complacency in the dumper, whereas they've put in the work, become a version 2.0, and have a queue of people wanting to get to know them. This happens more often than you think. And this is why today's podcast is so important, because we're talking about how your ex's value reduces. And often it's lack of desire and complacency, which is the biggest reason.